Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for a Monday Matters. Jen, this one will probably be coming out the week of Thanksgiving. And happy Thanksgiving. What are you guys going to be doing this year? Are you with family, friends? What's happening with the Schwankes?
Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. It's my favorite. There are no gifts. There's no nonsense. There's just good food and a little bit of time. So I'll be hosting my parents, and then we'll go to my in-laws, and not much. I cannot wait to have my son home. So he is in college only a couple hours away, but I've seen him, I think, 48 hours since he left, which is a positive. I know that, but I'm a little unmoored, so I can't wait to see him.
There's nothing better. We have a daughter that lives in Chicago, and she's coming home. And so everyone will be together, and me too. I love Thanksgiving because we can all be together, and there's no stress of wrapping presents or going to too many places. And so, yeah, lots of joy. I'm looking forward to it. Recently, in one of your newsletters, Principal Problems, you wrote a post about cracking the code. And it's so interesting because when I read that post, I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I had just written a post myself called "What is Curiosity Teaching You?" And so I wanted to bring that to today's conversation, which is how do we as leaders hold on to the core of what school is all about? And so I'll start with a funny story, which is when I grew up on the farm, we had an electric fence running in the back part of our behind the house, down in the area where we kept our some goats and pigs and chickens, and my dad ran an electric wire there to try to keep the pigs and goats in their place. And I was probably 5 or 6 years old, Jen, when I remember standing there just watching that wire and thinking, I know that it's supposed to hurt the animal. What happens if I touch it? And of course, the curiosity that I had eventually led me to the foolish decision to reach out and touch that wire. If you've ever touched a hot electric fence, then you'd never want to touch it again. And so my curiosity led to discovery, which led to a lesson I haven't forgotten, which led to the wisdom to know how to behave around that fence. And I was writing about that memory because sometimes curiosity leads us to really painful experiences, but often curiosity leads us also to pretty wonderful experiences. And so I just wanted to sit here because I think it may seem really simple to say that out loud, but how is curiosity something that has helped you maintain your heart as a learner?
Well, that's really cracking the code, right? Before we get to that, can I tell you my electric fence story?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I will tell our listeners, this is going to make you question my intelligence. But I had an older sister who she told me she would give me $5 if I could clutch the electric fence for 5 seconds. And I tried it. And I will tell listeners that is not possible. And don't try it. And if you have children whose older sibling is paying the younger one $5 to try to electrocute themselves, you might want to look the other way. I am okay. But yes, electric fences, they made that little tick, tick, tick to tell you if they were live. So whenever I hear that sound to this day, I'm like, that was a bad day for me. But that's a case where I knew exactly what I was going to get. I knew it was going to be bad, but I really wanted that $5. But back to curiosity, that's really what my newsletter about cracking the code is about. And this is exactly what yours is about as well. The curiosity being really the engine of learning. So even when we're the leader, even when we are, we theoretically know all the stuff, right? We have to have that same cycle of inquiry and discovery and application that we want for our students. And that's really what you're writing about here, how leaders have to intentionally carve out that time for reflection, meetings with themselves.
Yeah. And I think what's so fascinating for me is the number of ways that you can reflect in order to be aware of what you're learning. And so I know this actually came up in one of our Q&As recently, but so we may be repeating a couple of things that we've said in the past, but I just want to say it again here that one of the best professional development opportunities you have is taking the time to take a step back from what you're actually doing and ask, what did I just learn from what I just went through? And what could I do differently the next time? Or what can I hold on to and share with someone else through the process? And a good friend of mine, Frederick Buskey, he and I love to share reflective tools with each other, but he introduced me to a really easy one that, well, it's not easy, but it's simple, called the 5-minute coaching. And it involves 3 questions that he likes to ask me sometimes when we're just catching up about an event or a learning moment. And the questions are: 1, what went well? 2, were there any surprises? And 3, what would you do differently next time? And it's interesting, Jen, because I've posed those same questions to other friends and educators in the moment, and it really is interesting to see what happens when you just have the opportunity to reflect on what went well. Were there any surprises? What would you do differently? And I know that's just one simple tool that helps us unpack what curiosity should be teaching us. But for me, the the hardest thing I think sometimes for us to do as leaders is recognize these are the same cycles happening with our students, and that should be happening with our teachers, and that should be happening with us. So I guess I'm also curious, how can we encourage our teachers and students to also practice these cycles of reflection, which is really what's happening in our best learning environments. But how do we encourage that?
I think as you were talking, I was thinking about a really incredible experience I had recently, and it involved me putting my ego and my facade aside. And here's what I mean by that. I have never really understood, not really understood, the complications that go with graduation. I know it happens. I know there's the classes. In Ohio, we have something called SEALs that students have to earn. There's alternate pathways. And I have often been like, yeah, I get it, right? But there's somebody in our district, and she is hands down a master of this. And so I actually put my tail between my legs recently, and I went to her and I said, will you teach me? I want to know everything. I want to know how we got here. I want to know where we were, what changed with the law, how we got here. Show me the spreadsheets. And she gave me an hour of her time. And by the way, we had Google, or we had Gemini transcribe it. So it was the first time where I've listened to a instructor and I just listened. I listened really hard because I didn't have to worry about notes. I didn't have a pen out. I knew that was all going to come later. It was transformative. Not only because I feel like the older I get, the more discipline I have to listen. That was really what I was kind of talking about with cracking the code. But she started at the beginning, and God love her. She gave me an entire hour of her time. And I walked out of it thinking I should have done that 5 years ago. I should have asked questions about this 5 years ago. So that goes back to your 3 questions. What went well? What went well is I learned a lot. Were there any surprises? Yeah, pretty much everything, because it was pretty much new content. And then what would I do differently next time? I think I would have asked earlier. I think I will read the transcript and think of some other questions. So all of that is to say, I think that your 5-minute coaching tool can apply to anything, but we have to model it first, and we have to model it for kids and teachers.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that you said in your newsletter post on cracking the code, which was um, being willing to say, I don't know what you just said.
Right.
Just being willing to say, I don't use that acronym, or that's not a practice that I really understand, or why did you use that abbreviation, or
Right.
whatever it is. But just the humility to go,
Right.
to be the person in the room to go, I don't really understand what you're talking about.
Well,
Um,
I've often said as principals, as leaders, everybody assumes we know everything. And so we assume we have to act like we know everything, but oh my gosh, no, we don't. We can say, "Ooh, help me with that one."
I love it. Um, I'm thinking of a funny story that I'm not sure if I should tell here, but I'll tell it anyway. One time I was at an athletic event and I normally did not sit down by the coaches' areas because I was supervising, but for some reason, I guess it was a tournament, I went to sit beside our athletic director. And at that very moment, it was in the middle of a basketball game, this official just ran straight up to me and he just said, "Can you get me a glass of pickle juice?" And then he ran away. And I looked at the athletic director and I was like, "What? What?" And he's like, "Well, go up to the concessions, ask them for a glass of pickle juice and they'll give it to you." So I just went. I just followed orders and I came back down and I handed it to the official and he ran off. And then the athletic director looked at me and said, "It's kind of an old wives' tale, but when you're getting a cramp, if you drink pickle juice, it'll help you from cramping." And so at that moment, I was thinking, okay, 20 something years now that I've been in this field, and it's the first time anyone's asked me for a glass of pickle juice. And obviously, I didn't have enough experience with
Right.
basketball to know pickle juice was that. So you never know, Jen, when you're going to be in the moment for something new. There's another assessment that I like to do with leaders. Um, and this is actually something that I often do when I'm at the end of a meeting with a team where we've talked about all the stuff, and then I'll say, okay, I'm just going to say 4 statements. And I want you on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 equals little time, 5 equals lots of time, just to give yourself a score for each of these statements. And so I'm going to do this for any listeners too. So statement 1, I have been visible and present with every teacher, every student, every day. Statement 2, I'm meditating, listening, reflecting on helpful books and lessons. Statement 3, I'm making healthy choices in my sleep, nutrition, exercise. Statement 4, I'm being faithful to my loved ones with my time and attention. And then I stop and I'll say, okay, now add up your points for each of those. The highest number you can get is 20. So out of 20, what number would you give yourself? And then we'll go around and everyone will share their number. And it's so interesting, Jen, how often leaders have told me later, or sometimes in the moment, either one, they didn't recognize an area where they had lost attention,
Mhm.
or two, some of them will tell me in advance, they'll take action because they know this is coming. And so they'll be taking actions in advance so that they can be ready to be able to say, I have focused on these things in advance too. But for me, that quick self-assessment is something that I practice too, because then it gives me an opportunity to fit it within the context of my work. Because obviously I'm in this work, I'm no longer present every day with every teacher, every student, but I am trying to be present and visible with the people whom I'm serving. And learning and listening and reflecting doesn't mean I have to be sitting reading a book. It could mean that I'm doing exactly what we're doing right now. I'm connecting with someone else, or I'm being in the moment and reflecting on that moment. And making healthy choices doesn't mean that I have the same routine that Jen Schwanke does. It means that I have made the choices that work for me, that keep me healthy. And then my faithfulness to my loved ones with my time and attention is going to look different now than it did 10 years ago when my kids
Mhm.
were at home. And so none of these are prescriptive, but they're all reflective, which I think is another important part of staying curious.
Yeah, that's right. And I also think part of this is solitude. You talked about that.
Mm.
Why don't you connect those two things about the importance of taking time to really think and meet with themselves?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think the hardest part of um, the work that we do is we're always serving others. And so recently I asked some leaders in one of my coaching groups, when was the last time you set a meeting for yourself to just work on your most important goals? And it was really funny, actually, because the group was really blunt. One of them was like, well, the only time I've ever with myself is in the bathroom.
Mhm.
And then even then, people are knocking at the door
Right.
asking me questions. And one leader actually said she has to take like a pole and like put it in front of the doorknob, just so that she
Right.
could finish a conversation on the phone or something. And so they were all laughing about all the places we've had to hide, all the places we've
Yeah.
had to run to try to get alone. Um, but one of the leaders was like, what do you actually mean by that question? And I said, well, what I mean, I'm trying to be provoking here by asking you, when is the last time that you actually set aside time on your own schedule for you to just reflect? or just work on that next thing that's important to you. And I do work with some leaders who tell me they do that, and then people still try to schedule on top of it, or people still try to squeeze into that. And so I don't have the magic wand for this situation, Jen. I will say that in my relationship with my former staff at school, especially my site secretary, when she began to recognize how important reflection was for me. And so if I needed a meeting with myself to just catch up on some things, I would tell her I was doing it, and I would ask her to protect me. And she would I would step out of a reflection time, and she would say, 6 people came to see you. And I answered every question, and they really don't need a follow-up but they thought they did. But we took care of it. And so whatever that looks like for anyone listening, I know that the fires are constant. My good friend, Darren Peppert, was a guest on our show, Jen, and he told me the story of a balcony in his school where he would walk up so he could kind of see students and activities, but it was also his reflection space. And so he would go up there and just kind of unwind, talk through things to himself. And his secretary had access to his calendar, and he started noticing on his calendar, suddenly it started showing up balcony time. She started placing it on there for him because she realized it's been a while since he's reflected. Let me get some balcony time out here. So I know we need to wrap this up for our Monday Matters, Jen, but as we do, I just want to remind leaders that curiosity often can lead to painful moments like this funny stories you and I had grabbing electric fences. I remember another time when I was on the farm, and I was really curious how far the creek bed ran behind our property. And so I was probably 12. But one Saturday I just packed a lunch and I just went for exploring back on the creeks and found a beaver dam and carved my name in a tree and ended up in this back area, a pasture of a neighboring farm I'd never been in. And I found a cactus plant, which did not grow around our area very much. So I wrapped it in the bag for my lunch, took it home and showed it to my mom. She planted it right outside the house. And for years we would go out and watch it when it would bloom every year. And, sometimes curiosity leads us to long-lasting moments of discovery that we can share with others too. Sometimes they're just little bitty moments that we can enjoy, but sometimes they're long-lasting ones. And so I guess as we wrap up, I just want to give leaders permission to reflect. Give yourself time to reflect on your learning. Give yourself time to grow. Don't seek perfection, but don't stop being curious. And if you're listening to this at the time of Thanksgiving, then by all means, please just pause this week and just look into the faces of the people you love. Listen for those sounds that you don't want to forget, and be in that moment, but then allow those moments to inspire you for that next moment of learning.
And be grateful, right? That's what it's about, being grateful. I've mentioned my mom before. She's 80. She's has no idea really what the day-to-day of my work is, but she'll call me and say, "Tell me a story about school." She's so curious, she finds all of this fascinating. And so I try to remember to be grateful that a lot of people would love a job where nothing's ever the same, that you can go 20 years and not have been asked for pickle juice. And then there you are. So no day is the same. So we can be grateful for that.
Well, Principal Matters listeners, as you're stepping into whatever time of your work and season that you're in, please stay connected with our resources. Jen, how can they find you in your wonderful newsletter?
They can find me at jenschwanke.com. And if they would like to subscribe to the newsletter, just click on the link there and subscribe for a Tuesday morning update from me.
And you can find this post and all of our resources at williamdparker.com. Tim, we're also releasing podcasts now on YouTube. And so if folks want to go over there and see the wonderful editing that Emily's been doing by not just an audio version, but a video version, you can find that there too. But until next time, thanks for doing what matters. We'll talk to you soon.